Hello and welcome to the glamorous Las Vegas world of Register's Tiny Television. So my name's Tiny Tim Phillips from the Register, and today we've got an exciting hour for you on server refresh. Do you soldier on with the old ones, or do you buy nice new ones instead? Now, very quickly on the interface today, if you look above my head up there, then you can see that you can ask questions. Please do ask the questions, because if you don't ask them and we don't answer them, you've only got yourself to blame. There's something for you to give us feedback, because when you give us feedback about these presentations, we can make them better for you in the future. You can get our bios, you can download the presentation, and you'll find out later there's a good reason to download the presentation today. And also you see that there's the vote category out there over to the right, because we have a little mini questionnaire for you. For Freeform Dynamics, they just never tire of asking you things. So we've got some questions for you. So we'll find out exactly what you're thinking about some of the things we're going to be talking about. You can access that anytime. It's good to get your votes in early, and so you make sure that they're counted, unlike an Afghan election. Now, every Las Vegas world has its Rat Pack, and head of our Rat Pack today, the sort of Frank Sinatra of this webcast, if you like, from Intel we have Ian Beckingham. Hello, Ian.
Hello.
Now, Ian, this is about server refresh, and you're not going to just tell us that we've all got to buy new servers, are you?
Tim, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm, maybe give some anecdotal data about what we've done at Intel. But no, it's not going to be a server sales pitch.
If you step over the line, there's going to be a lot of comments about that, and you know that, because, yeah, okay. And every Frank Sinatra needs his sort of Dean Martin. And with us today from Freeform Dynamics, old Red Eyes is back. Not safe for work, it's John Collins. John, hello.
Hello, everyone. Let's leave it there, shall we?
Let's just leave it there.
All right, presentations to get through
Let's just leave it there. So thank you very much. That's been great. No, okay, John. First of all, we need your information. Tell us a little bit about what the state of the servers that Reg readers are using are.
Okay, well, very first off, can I just say thank you to the Reg audience, because in the course of this workshop, we thought anyone who saw the last webcast around desktop, that was on the back of a rather large survey where we asked a whole bunch of questions. As you say, Tim, we love doing this stuff, and so we thought, what can we get away with? How big can we make this thing? And we got a great response to that, and so we did an even bigger one for the server survey, and it was a real monster. And we got a stack of responses. I think just under 1,000 responses. So thank you very much to all the Reg audience for filling that in, because it really does help us understand what's really going on, and we all know just how much it's worth understanding what's really going on compared to what we might like to be going on. It
gives you something to put on your slides as well.
Well, indeed. Call me old-fashioned. And when we do look at the slides, what's very interesting to us is, again, it's not broken in terms of the current state of the server environment, the server estate, etc. So the fact of the matter is, if we look at large companies, if I move on to the next slide now, a good 40% of organisations, of medium to large organisations, and about a third of smaller organisations said, yep, we've got everything we need, everything's fine, thank you very much, it ain't broken, so we're not going to try and fix it. And just under around 3/4 of the people that we asked said, well, seems to be all right, it ain't broken, and that's very, that's reasonably standard. That's reasonably what we'd expect, and we can put that back to back. I'll talk in a minute about some of the management findings on this particular survey. But we know when we ask about how good is your data center, there's this kind of pervading idea that, and maybe it's true in some data centers, that it's all falling down around everyone's ears, that it's in a state of implosion, meltdown, whatever word you want to use. But the reality is, it's sort of all right. I think what's interesting, and this sort of came out in the desktop survey as well, was that while it might sort of be all right, there's a point at which it's going to stop being all right. And in the desktop survey, in the presentation, we talked about the bathtub curve, where things can be trickling along for a while, but after a while, the number of problems you start to hit starts to rise, and we're going to cover that as we go through the the presentation.
But does this surprise you? Is this what you expected to see?
Yeah, because we know what it's always interesting, and I think that the real surprise every time is the reality check. Mm-hmm. It's to say, it's a bit like if you look at accident statistics, you think everyone's driving like maniacs, but actually you drive down the motorway and you don't have a crash. So right. It's okay. The world is okay.
Uh-huh.
So.
You must have, Ian. You must have got a little bit worried though when you see things like the IDC and the Gartner server shipment figures. It makes you imagine that the dark part of this slide that's going to be reducing.
Yeah, I think and we'll probably come on and talk a little bit about virtualization, and of course virtualization consolidates all those servers down, right, which ultimately means less servers. Mm-hmm. But I think one of the key things that we keep seeing is the demand for information within customers, consumers, enterprises is always on the increase. Right, it's never going down.
Mm-hmm. It's a good job, really, else you'd have no business.
Yes,
that's right. All right, John, what else?
So what we did do in this survey, and I think that the report is imminent, by the way. It's been written. It's in the last final review phases right now, and a bit of DTP. So watch this space. Watch the reg for the server report that's going to come up. What as many reg readers know, what we like to do is compare and contrast some of the different answers and look for trends and correlations between them. And in this research, we were particularly looking at, well, it's not about ultimately. The server environment, the server estate doesn't matter. What does matter is the level of service that's being provided and how easy it is to manage that level of service.
I get you. I was a little bit shocked there for a minute. I was
it's a means to an end.
Get it.
And you can't have the end without the means, but ultimately it's the end that matters more than the means. Mm-hmm. So what we did want to do was compare the state of the server estate with actually how good people were at delivering services. Okay. Or how good they were at managing services. So here's one example of that. Not everybody is, if I look at this, quick look. Right, yep, so larger organisations tend to be better at monitoring service delivery than the smaller organisations. Smaller organisations don't need to do it, one could argue, so that's kind of fine. But then if I click through, and we think about some of the challenges that I mentioned in terms of operations. Again, it's not broken. This is probably totally unreadable for everyone out there.
I'm straining, actually.
Yeah. But what I have done is picked up on that top line, which is how difficult it is for operations staff. So as we can see, do you feel overstretched was the question. Mm-hmm. Larger organisations do find it more difficult to manage their server environments than smaller organisations.
And that must be because they're trying to do more, because the large organisations have people whose job it is to do this. Small organisations don't, generally.
It's complexity management, a lot of it. So there's more to be done. There's more change going on. Requirements are changing faster. It isn't... Very few organisations, and even if they are like this, have a situation where everything looks the same and is just working. That tends to be, after a major consolidation exercise, you might hit that. But generally, there'll be a bunch of servers over there that's running one application, one set of databases. There'll be the Blade servers over there that were part of the consolidation exercise that happened 5 years ago, and they're sort of doing their job, but they're starting to get a bit worn at the seams. And then there'll be the mainframe in the corner, and it'll be a mix of everything. So smaller organisations will have 2 or 3 servers sitting in the corner, job done. So it's always going to be less of a stretch. So
squinting at the left-hand side chart here, what we're seeing is that about half the people are at the problem end for all these different jobs that they're doing, and about half the people are saying, it's okay, it's not too bad.
Yeah, and again, it's not broken, but what we have found in other research is that it's not so much whether or not you're having any one of these problems. Everyone's having them to an extent. The real issues start to occur if you're feeling the pain in more than 3 or 4 or 5 areas at once. Mm-hmm. So not only are you short of time, Also, budgets are squeezed. Also, your backups aren't going quite right. Also, your event management is you're more reactive than proactive, etc., etc. There's a point at which you start to fall off the plate in terms of being able to deliver service when all of those things accumulate.
Yeah.
But when we put everything together, I hope in the next chart. Oh no, so hang on. There was one quick chart about. Oh yes, sorry. This is the one.
You need to get on top of your slides today,
This is the one.
John
This
Collins.
is the one.
You're meant to be
This is
the
the one.
world's second best analyst, voted by his peers. The world's second best analyst.
I'm terribly sorry. Just whip those stripes off.
Yeah.
It's when we put everything together and we compare whether or not you've got an up-to-date environment, and then whether or not you're doing a decent job of some of these things. That's when things start getting interesting, and it's reasonably clear, and you can see this from the charts, that organisations that have everything in order in terms of their infrastructure are also better able to do the jobs they're trying to do in terms of management, and that's what you would expect as well. The difficulty comes...
They're just more organised people.
Well, that's what I was going to say. The difficulty comes for people that aren't going to be that kind of... And there's always... everyone knows someone like that. I mean, there's always the guy who's always got his shirts are ironed, and always got, his shoes are clean, and always, good at sport, very bright, got all the right exams.
Not you or
at
me,
school.
by the look of it.
I'm into
Ian's in the frame.
Here he is, everyone. It's Ian.
I polished the shoes.
Ian, on this, at the same time as you've been putting a lot of management, trying to put a lot of management capability into what happens to automate more of the job of keeping your servers well trained and working well. At the same time, complexity comes and defeats that problem, isn't it? It's a race you can never win.
It's one of those where we introduce problems like, I wouldn't say it's a problem, but you introduce a technology like virtualization, and that creates a whole bunch of different problems, right? Because the problem changes from, I used to just be able to manage one server with one OS and maybe a couple of applications on, to, well, now I've got one server with multiple virtual servers on with virtualized storage and multiple applications. How on earth do you do that? So you're absolutely right. There's some complexity that creeps in that then gets addressed with, other technologies as well.
I guess there's plenty of people sort of look at this would absolutely agree with you that virtualization's been a problem. That's day-to-day is a problem for them. Although in the big picture later, then, they get the benefit of it.
It's an interesting one. It's a bit like bureaucracy. There's a kind of... in a convoluted way, there's a place for it because it slows down politicians. If decisions could be made that quickly, we'd be in a right... Well, one could argue we're already in a right old state. We'd be in an even bigger state. But the kind of a nice sluggish civil service is always great to make sure that nothing happens too fast. And with something like virtualization, answers on the postcard. On that.
Anyone who's in the public sector.
Yeah.
If you'd like to address your comments to John. Specifically to John.
Hate mail directed to me. But it's similar in IT terms. I think that we have this idea that it would be great to respond to requirements like that, but my goodness, if you jumped every time the business said jump, you'd be jumping in every which direction. And so the idea of dynamic IT and being able to absolutely dance on the head of a pin IT is great in theory, but maybe it's quite good to keep the business a bit slower. We'll certainly be finding that out over the coming years, I would have thought.
Okay, get back on topic.
Sorry, we digress. So, absolutely, what we're seeing is it's not broken, but if you've got a more up-to-date environment in place, it may be because you're that kind of organisation, as we've said, but generally you will be better off from the point of view of you'll be able to deliver a better service. And that kind of stands to reason. All we're really doing here is kind of showing the stats that
I guess one of the things that we're going to find out, hopefully, today, is that if you want to change, if you want to get better at getting on top of this stuff, do you need to buy new stuff to do it? Is there an advantage in buying new stuff to do it?
Well, Very, very, very interesting point there, Tim, which brings me to my next slide.
That was...
See what we did
I
there.
didn't mean
Who
to
says
do that.
what?
If I'd have known that was going to happen, I'd have kept my mouth shut.
I think most importantly, perhaps, no one ever changes stuff just because it would be nice. So even if you know that, to move into a place where you are being a bit more efficient, etc., that's never going to be compelling enough a reason to go to the CIO and say, yeah, we just thought that it would be nice to have things that are easier to manage. You've got to have a pretty hard reason to want to change your server environment or upgrade or whatever else. Mm-hmm. And in the research that we did, we said, so what are those hard reasons? And we asked two questions. One was more around the kind of business drivers for what's going to cause change, and one was more the technology drivers. Top of the list on the business side, which was to your point earlier, and fascinatingly to us, was this data growth question.
There's just more stuff.
There's just more information to manage. I think that sometimes forgotten in all this IT world is it really is about the information, the flow of information through the organisation. Too many shuns there, but I'll try and get out of it. That those data flows are automated by IT, and the technology is supporting that. And right now, the amount of information that organisations are trying to deal with, it's the old wardrobe principle. Whenever your technology gets better, you stuff more information in it, and so then it gets better again. So it could be that desktops are now able to support video better, so we're all trying to use video conferencing, and then someone says, well, for compliance reasons, we need to log those video conferences, and therefore we need to store that. Or it could be just, if anyone's like me and starts receiving 20 meg PowerPoint slides, and you just think, how on earth could it be so big? But I now need to send it to 5 people, and suddenly you've got 100 meg of information. So those kinds of issues are causing massive data growth above and beyond the changing requirements that we'd expect from the business.
Quick question on the business drivers, one that's come in here, which relates to the last slide and to this one. Demands for higher availability, the larger enterprises. Is this a driver for increased organisation in IT departments?
Is it felt that demands for higher availability...
increased organisation.
Increased organisation. I think the honest answer is no. Because the link is not necessarily there. Availability tends to be treated architecturally first, and then with process second. And it could easily be argued it should be the other way round. That if you have process that ensures that information is that risks are mitigated, so you know what risks are going to happen. You think about them proactively. You then put in place the architectural strategies. That's the right way round, and that's what we constantly try to encourage. But largely, high availability. Need offsite. Kind of, it's those kind of people try to treat these things technologically first.
But you have to get, in a virtualised world, Ian, you have to get availability strapped down because it raises the stakes.
I think you're right, Tim. The analogy I always give on this one is it's like putting all your eggs in one basket, right? You don't want to go and drop that basket because whereas you had, let's say, 20 servers before running 20 applications, you're now on one server with 20 applications, right? If that goes down, that's a material impact to the business. So you do have to look at the high availability and the resilience and the service levels that you're going to provide when looking at this.
Okay.
It's fascinating. The whole virtualization thing, I think, is going to have a bigger adverse impact than is currently being predicted. So I'll predict it. There you go. It's going to have a big adverse impact. But largely, virtualization brings a whole bunch of whole bunch of advantages. It does increase flexibility, but flexibility itself is quite a dangerous tool. So being able to move a virtual machine from one server to another is great. But then you start thinking, well, where's the machine gone? You can't look at a server and think that's where that operating system is, that's where that application is, etc., etc. It could be on anyone. And so if it happens to have moved on to a less reliable server, you're actually increasing your risk.
Yeah.
So it's questions like that that we've not necessarily tussled with just yet. And as you can see from the, sorry Tim, from the technology drivers, virtualization is the number one thing that people are saying to us is going to cause them to change their server. So it's very important. People may think we're banging on about virtualization quite a lot in things like this at the moment, but that's because people are doing a lot of it. So
yeah, I just wanted. I'm sorry I talked over you there, John, because I just wanted to make sure that if you're gonna vote, click on the vote thing and vote. There's only 3 questions, but there's a few people that haven't voted yet, and we kind of need to know what your opinion is on John's 3 questions that he came up with, because it will help these guys, and ultimately help you if you don't want to help them.
So when we look at virtualization, moving on to the next slide, done it.
Yeah.
The number of organisations that are looking at adopting virtualization right now is high. There's very much a kind of a pull from the market, as market analysts like to use phrases like that, particularly in larger organisations. But we know from Reg feedback that we shouldn't rule out smaller organisations with virtualization. Being able to, so a smaller organisation will tend to have a more limited set of workloads. It'll be file and print, it'll be email, it'll be some specific applications. But there's no reason at all why they can't be why they can't be just run on 1 or 2 servers, or a very much more easy to manage, much less power, etc. kind of environment. So there's certainly a place for x86 server virtualization in smaller organisations as well. And given all of this, a big question to us, and I don't know how the polls turned out on this one. Yeah, it might be worth just bringing this up, shall we, Tim?
Yeah, on the so this is poll question. That's poll question 1. Yeah, that would be it. Yeah, so budgets are starting to open up. Seems to be is by far most people are saying. And actually, most people are in the top half, either back to normal or the budgets are starting to open up. So this is, it's good news for the vendors in the room here. It's still, so there is some money available, and it'll be interesting to see later how that comes down into deciding what the refresh cycle is on the servers.
That's very interesting, actually, because when we asked a similar question about 2 weeks ago, it was less positive, I have to say. But these things are changing week on week. I remember sitting down with another analyst. He said, the downturn's going to end on June the 6th, 2010, like that. And it was a bit tongue-in-cheek, but not entirely tongue-in-cheek. But right now, things are chopping and changing so fast, it's very hard to put any figures on anything.
It's kind of like, it's a cautious optimism, isn't it? And there are, it's still, as we said, that there's still it's about 40% of people are saying nothing yet or nowhere near getting more budget.
I think those people are saying, look, okay, the kids will get Christmas presents this year. We'll have a bit of turkey and then we'll see, nut roast, and see what see what the new year brings. That's the kind of stage we're at in the year, aren't we? Mm-hmm. But looking at certainly investment schedules, it doesn't seem to have slowed down when we've been looking at this kind of thing. Whether or not people are going to be upgrading their servers. So to the point about, is Intel just wanting to sell people more stuff? Well, people want to carry on buying servers. There's a kind of regeneration cycle thing that's happening whether people want it to or not. That's just it's like changing your car. Sooner or later you think, it's time. And that's just a normal part of IT best practice, I think.
Yeah.
So yep, absolutely. Large companies, 60% are going to be investing quite a lot in servers over the next year. Mm-hmm. Smaller companies are going to be investing a lot less, but they're still going to be investing.
That's a higher result than I would have expected from the small companies.
Yep. So a final point from me, back to the best practice kind of areas as well. We're very keen, as I said, to think about this server stuff as a means to an end, how well it's managed, how well it's delivering services, etc., etc. So we did want to ask a bunch of questions in the survey around management topics. And so if I could just quickly give a bit of an insight on that stuff. There was a couple of years ago, and I think this is pervading still, it's just we've stopped talking about it quite so much, there was quite a big level of interest around things like patch management and around just general whether or not people had all the tools they needed to manage their servers and asset management, configuration management, that kind of thing. And absolutely, there's still an issue in terms of people not really thinking that they have sufficient management tooling in place. It's worth highlighting this at this stage, I think, because virtualization actually adds to the challenge when it comes to asset management. I mean, when you've got far more virtual assets, we know we've spoken to some Reg readers, for example, who have said that the problem they have is that developers are creating, just create another virtual server. Well, that one didn't work. Create another one. Well, create another one. And that's fine. That's absolutely, that's what the technology's there to do. But what they're not doing is didn't need that one, delete that one, delete that one. And you end up with 10, 100 servers that you're not absolutely sure which ones are needed and which ones aren't.
You've got licensing problems, you've got management problems,
backup problems, patching problems, etc., etc. So I think that when we look at these charts, we see that only a third of organisations right now say that they're using these kinds of capabilities in a big way. Roughly a third again are saying that they are looking to increase the use of these technologies. I think we may well see the wheels fall off the cart a little bit if virtualization really starts to kick in, because this isn't going to be sufficient to support the virtualized, more dynamic environment.
So you're actually saying that because of virtualized server sprawl, then we're going to get a lot of problems that are coming out?
There's some real simple technical issues around, for example, backup scheduling, around patching of live machines, patching of machines that have been switched off, because virtual machines, you don't need to keep them on all the time, of course, or you may choose not to keep them on all the time. So some real sort of down-to-earth practical issues that are going to arise and become more problematic.
Okay.
I don't know what you think about that, Ian.
I'll come on to some of the challenges. I think you highlight them there, John.
Okay. So now, actually, and we're now on to your point. That's you finished, isn't it?
I'm done. Yep.
Yeah. Well,
any questions?
Just stick around, though. Yeah, because we'll have some questions. Okay. So Ian, that's the way things are at the moment for Reg readers. That's the way things are. So how's Intel responding to that?
Well, I think there's interesting points that the research shows, and it's really good to see the poll data there. It's fantastic. I got to say that a lot of companies are looking to put some dollars on the table and refresh their estate. I'll be honest with you, this is something at Intel, right? And let me just be clear. I know the readers are probably thinking, oh, yeah, that's Intel. They must get the fastest and the greatest and stuff like that all the time. Well, unfortunately, they don't, right? It's a normal IT department. It has to compete for all the dollars versus the marketing and the sales programs that Intel runs, okay? One of the things that we found is we didn't have a server refresh strategy until 2 years ago, right? What used to happen? Well, in 1996, believe it or not, we had 1,000 servers, and that went to about 65,000 servers in 2007.
Good Lord.
Right? So there's a little bit of server sprawl for you there, John, okay? Yeah. Now, one of the things that we also didn't realise, the IT guys did was they kind of looked at those servers and we tried to maximise the asset, maximise the investment on them, rather than have a dedicated, right, we're going to swap that one every 4 years or so.
So you were basically running them into the ground.
I wouldn't go that far. We would always find a place for them under my desk or something.
Right. You must have had a very big desk.
But,
yeah. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Tim. But the general point here was, maybe they would be going out of warranty. We didn't think about some of the costs associated with servers going out of warranty, etc. And what I'll go and talk, hopefully share with the readers is, look, this is some of the things that we've done. These are some of the results that we've done, right? And that you can see. And then I'll talk a little bit about, well, okay, if you're thinking about a server refresh strategy, what should I consider?
Okay.
Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah.
Great. Obviously, we talked about servers that we used to have around the place. And, if you go back, there's a couple of points I really wanted just to highlight here. I guess actually the first one is IT spending. So if you look at the IT spend in an organisation, 2/3 of it is all about maintenance, right? It's maintaining those servers because, by the way, nobody wants that stuff to go down, right? The problem is the rest of it is all about innovation and enhancement. Now, guess where the budgets, if they do get squeezed, they get squeezed not on the maintenance, right? That's normally, the feedback I get is actually that's pretty central for us.
What it costs to keep the things working is what it costs.
Yeah, that's all about keeping the business running.
Yeah.
The innovation and the enhancement stuff is the stuff that gets squeezed. And, ironically, this is a real downward spiral for IT because the enhancement and the innovation stuff is all about adding value back into the business. So if you're squeezing that, then you're actually giving less value, right? And so the spiral goes on and on and on.
I was speaking to one organisation and they were basically told there's no new money. So, there's your pie. The pie is 10% smaller than it was last year because everyone's getting a bit of a squeeze. And if you want to do any innovation, if you want to do any clever new project stuff, you've got to find the money out of the pie. So that was it. It's kind of so. I've got all my licenses, I've got everything else, and if I've got a tenner left over, that's what I've got to do any new projects with.
Right.
If I'm lucky, it's
Okay,
tough.
yeah.
I think the other thing to look at as well is if you look at the actual install base, right, and this kind of does link to the maintenance aspect as well, right here. You go back 2005, 40% of this stuff is on single core. It's 4 years old. It's coming, it's out of warranty, right? You've then got another 40% of the install base, which is 3 years old, about to come out of warranty, right? So you're going to have to look at extended warranties or, releasing, etc. Is dual core. Right, so the estate is old, and what I'm going to highlight on some of the slides is actually, there's been terrific leaps in performance, right? But of course, so performance is key, but also energy efficiency as well. And then we'll have a look at some of that moving forward.
Which 3 or 4 years ago would have been ridiculous to even bother talking about.
Absolutely. I used to cover some of the finance sector, right? And
not such a big sector anymore.
Not.
That's right. They can cover all of it.
Yeah.
That's why I'm here doing this job. And it was interesting. We actually saw that coming in the finance sector a few years back, and going, Intel energy efficiency is really important to us. And I've heard anecdotal data around, you can't get any more power into Canary Wharf, right? So what do I do? We go back to all those data feeds, that market data coming in. I've got more and more data. I can't expand my data center. What do I do, right? And so energy efficiency, if people don't know it, it is key.
I know from this survey that if you ask 978 people, as we did, power isn't going to come up top of the list in terms of drivers for change across the board. But what it is the subset of people that have a power challenge, they see it as one of the major challenges they have. So it's a bit like, you don't think petrol's important until you've run out. It's kind of, it's not a challenge, and then it's a crisis.
Yeah. Okay.
Good. One of the points, so we talked about a little bit on energy, energy consumption, and I think one of the slides also talked around, the reader poll was about, virtualization and architecting for it. And, if I remember the slide correctly, about 60% of the readers in the big business segment were looking at large business, were looking at virtualization, and around 35% maybe in the small business. this isn't meant to be one of these, oh, here's a technical diagram, right? This is really highlighting the fact that actually this, the Xeon processor 5500, okay, I got it in, thank you, Tim. B.
You aren't half rubbish at naming your product.
Yeah, we have a whole marketing department for that. Please don't get me started.
Okay.
I guess the point I was trying to make was, this is a step change, right? This has changed, if you went back to those single core and dual core stuff, this has come on leaps and bounds. And the analogy we were talking about, John and I, was, okay, a car gets you from A to B, so does a plane. This is the plane, right? Okay, you kind of get there, but it does, it takes you a step further and beyond. So what we've really done is we've listened to our customers, and they've said, look, performance is key, okay, energy efficiency you really need to get on top of, okay, and virtualization is key to us. So if you look at in the new Xeon, and I'll touch a little bit on this on the next slide, there's far better power consumption. We've lowered the power consumption. If you look over time, the power consumption is coming down massively, yet the performance is going up, and we've added in hooks for virtualization. So there's Intel virtualization technology in there. That's all about, back to the virtualization question around putting your eggs in one basket. It's trying to make that basket a really safe basket by providing those hooks. So it's all about service levels, reliability, availability. That's what that technology does.
There's a quick question before we move on, actually. Someone's asking, why do we keep banging on about virtualization when hardware's so cheap? Why is it such an obsession?
Can pass that back to it. There's a fascinating statement that I didn't fully realise, but when I was starting to research some of this stuff, which is that the power that goes into a server tends to be the same. So I can't remember, is it 85 watts or something that goes into the back of a server? It's a sort of standard figure, 120, or it's something like that. And so while the cost of hardware might not be going down, the amount of power that can go into the hardware is exactly the same. And then there's so much more you can do with that hardware. So why buy 10 servers when you can put 10 things on one server? Because you'll be paying 10 times as much as you need to on the hardware and 10 times as much as you need to on the power. It's kind of, it's just logic. It's a more with less kind of argument.
One of the people that was asking about it said basically he's got a Linux server that's been online since 1997. It's kind of like, it's a not broke, so why?
Well, absolutely, and I'd say don't fix it. The amount of feedback that we've had throughout this workshop has been fantastic, and I recommend anyone to read through some of the comments on some of the articles we put up there. Some people say, virtualization, it's taken us to a place we could never have got to before, much easier, much more flexible, thank you, virtualization. Yeah. Other people have said, can't see the point, don't need it, but there are people that can't see the point and don't need it. It's kind of okay. It's not rocket science.
So maybe they're not watching this then. Okay, we need to crack on because we need to get, because there's a few people asking about what refresh rate you're going to recommend. I know we're going to get to that, and also they want us to put some figures on exactly what the Xeon does.
Yeah, no. So I saw one of the questions, and that was talking about, okay, so what are some of the power management features in the processor? You can actually see some of this here. So, I've got a graph in there talking about lower energy consumption. Mm-hmm. So 50% reduction in idle power, 12% overall, and that was just from one year to the next. There's actually some really innovative power technologies in there, right? I'm sure we've got a marketing name. I think it's called Intelligent Power Technologies. Will that do?
TM, yeah.
TM. And, but what it does is it looks at the loading on a server, right? And if we're not using some of those cores, it shuts them down, mm-hmm. right? So the power going to those cores is no longer required, so we can turn them off. Equally, if we're seeing additional server demand, we can boost as well, right? So we can do a turbo boost in terms of performance.
So you don't have to get out your graphite pencil anymore and sort of scrub over the...
No, scrubbing over the
little contacts.
Yes, the contacts.
I never did that. Yeah.
I did.
You did.
in terms of the performance, and critically it's performance per watt, and what I tried to do is link it back into the first slide that I was talking about, which was, well, okay, some of my estate is single core, some of it's dual core. Look at how the performance has changed. Now, I know we've gone from, so the bright people are going, oh yeah, but you've gone from 1 core to 4 cores. Mm-hmm. Well, yes, we have, but the whole car's changed in the interim, right? Because, yes, we put a bigger engine in it, and it has 4 cores, and we have QPI and hyper-threading and all of this kind of stuff. So we've upgraded the brakes, the suspension, we put a turbo on it, right? But the whole platform has seen a huge uptick in performance here. And hopefully that's what the readers can see here.
Mm-hmm. So you're putting that back onto performance per square foot as well for the space
Absolutely.
limited among us.
Absolutely. And one of the other points that I saw in the research, and I think it was one of the challenges that came out, was around operational staff being overstretched. Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, if you've got a ton of servers, I'm not saying that they're running around touching every single server, but obviously there's more servers to manage, there's more complexity there.
Yeah.
So one of the things I wanted to highlight was around when we look at consolidation of servers and some of the new features that are part of that Xeon 5500 series. So I'm going to talk a little bit about more on consolidation, some of the the ratios that we have seen, what it would look like if we consolidate the old estate into the new estate. We also have some additional features like the VT Flex migration that allows you to take those virtual machines, right, those virtual servers, and if the load increases, to say, actually I need another one of those and I'm going to have it on that machine, right? And we're seeing, if you think of consolidation as virtualization 1, and maybe some of this, resilience of high availability, or the scaling as kind of virtualization flavor 2, we are beginning to see more and more of this coming along. What the live migration is really about, though, is investment protection. So I've got some of my older Intel servers. I can now migrate my VMs to my latest stuff seamlessly, so it's giving you some versatility in there as well.
So gradually, as you are refreshing, you can keep moving your virtual machines onto the newer stuff if they need the newest stuff.
Absolutely.
Rather than having them stuck there on the old stuff.
Yeah.
And this is something that we've certainly seen from, back to what I said earlier about you're never going to go to the CIO, the IT director, and say, can we have an easier life? And can you spend $100,000 so that we can go home a bit earlier?
The answer's no.
The answer's generally going to be no.
Yeah.
But some of the kind of the spin-off benefits of virtualization in terms of being able to move machines around actually do make an easier life for the operators. Just, I need to upgrade the memory in that machine. I can just shift the virtual machine off onto another one, shut it down, upgrade the memory, bring it back up again. The users don't need to be informed 3 weeks in advance. Don't get the help desk calls coming in saying, where's my blooming application, etc., etc. It just makes for a bit of an easier life for everybody.
Yeah.
Good. So I did promise I would touch on some of the consolidation ratios, and this goes back to the operations staff being overstretched. Mm-hmm. If you had that server estate in 2005, and I put, it could have been 1,000 servers, we could have worked out the numbers, right? But I picked 184. Okay, so there's 184 servers. It could have been 42. I don't know.
The numerologists out there
probably come up with
184.
I guess that's because the numbers work out if you do 184.
It is the mark of yin.
I've got no idea.
I've got no idea,
quite
right?
honestly. Anyway,
Yeah.
if we could take those, 184 servers. They've all got their racks, etc., and we could put another 184 in. Right? That's one option.
Right.
Guess what? So they're
completely replace all your
rip them all
servers,
out,
put them in,
put some new stuff in. Going to get
and you get the top box here.
Yep.
Yes.
9 times.
Absolutely. So you're going to get a 9x performance increase, and you're going to reduce your power consumption by 18%. Now, the power consumption is a key one because the power bills, if it's like my bill at home, it's always going up, right? So.
184 servers, mate. I'm not surprised.
Yeah, those are the. I said I had a big desk. Yeah. It's a really big desk. The alternative is actually I can get the same level of performance by just consolidating to 21 servers, right? And some of the statistics that we've seen, and I'll be open and honest, this is what our IT group has seen.
These are your internal figures. I was going to ask this. This comes from what you've done.
So this is, we're seeing an 8-month payback on some of this. And I'll go into some of the reasons as to why that is a little bit later, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. On the download for these slides, we get into more depth on the figures that you've provided.
Yeah, that's right. If somebody goes, well, how did you come up with that figure?
I don't believe you.
I don't believe you.
Yeah.
There's some pointers in the download deck as to justify the numbers.
Slides that we can't see today because, frankly, they're very, very complicated, and there's a lot
Yes,
of.
and there's a lot of.
But it gives, and it's going to help people if they're going to be doing the.
Yeah, I'll also give them some pointers to. Okay, so, I've got my own server estate. Maybe I've got 384 servers. What should be the return on investment if I did consolidate or go with that? And there's some pointers in that when we come to the 5-step thing.
Yeah. Okay. We need to crack on because else we'll run short of time here.
Okay. So look, the next slide. There's a bunch of companies on there. Okay. Yes. Very very good, Ian. Thank you for pointing out the obvious.
I was thinking it, but I wasn't saying it.
I guess the common theme across these, right, and they're different companies, different verticals, different countries even, right, they've all done one thing, which is they've made a technology investment into new hardware.
Yeah.
Right? The high-level result, right, and I'm not going to read the slide, is they've got cost reduction, two things, cost reduction and one, a competitive advantage, whether that's increased performance, increased agility, increased serviceability, etc. Look, what I really wanted to do was talk about some of the findings, and I'm hoping this will be of interest for the readers, as to our IT department and how we've looked at server refresh. And as I mentioned, if you went back a couple of years, we didn't have a server refresh strategy. Well, we do now. So basically in 2008, we took 20,000 servers and we consolidated them down. You'll see on the next slide, we actually saved 45 million by doing that. Now, that's a big number.
Yeah.
If we extrapolate that out over the next 8 years, we are predicting between $200 and $250 million of savings. A lot of this is actually down to somewhat of cost avoidance as well. And I'll go through the model, the ROI model. One of the things that we looked at here is so there's some assumptions and some variables that come into it, right?
So on the bottom here, as I get it, there's things that you spend.
Yeah.
And then there's things that you save.
Yeah,
that are on the top.
Yeah, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So there's going to be some cost avoidance and some incurred costs that you're going to get. So as an example, right, when you consolidate those 184 servers down to 21, guess what? One of the things that you don't need is all those switch ports, those network ports, right? So you get rid of all of that kind of stuff automatically. Now that takes up power and space in a data center as much as servers do. When we looked at this, we looked at do we do a 2-year, 3-year, 4-year, 5-year or 6-year cadence? And of course, there's some assumptions made, right? One is actually the price of a server doesn't go up. It actually stays pretty flat. From year to year, you just tend to get more features and better performance. Also, we looked at our compute needs. Our compute needs, on average, grow around 15%. Now, when you look at some of the design compute facilities that we have, so our chips get more and more complicated, on each generation. That takes a lot of compute power behind the scenes. Some of that design compute power increases 35-45% year on year. We also then start looking at other things. We look at the utilities, right? So we look at energy, power,
right,
that kind of thing. We also look at things like having to build a new data center facility, right? That is hugely, costly. We were going along, chucking more and more servers along, and now, as you've seen by some of the graphs and data points, we can actually get far much more bang for our buck. We can actually retrofit some of our data centres and have all that compute power in there without having to build a complete new extension. And that's where we've seen some of the big savings. It's not having to build additional data centre facilities because we've been able to virtualise and consolidate down. Okay, and that probably saves us around 40 million. Other things that come into it, if I go back on the power, this might be, I'm not sure there's anything like this in the UK, but in Portland, Oregon, where we have some of our data centres, there's the Energy Trust of Oregon, okay? And what that does is it says, look, if you can reduce your carbon footprint by 5%, we'll give you some financial incentives by doing so.
Yes, yeah. Portland's one of the world's greenest cities, isn't
Absolutely.
it? Yeah, for these.
And we use, Intel uses a lot of wind power as well, right? But we reduced our carbon footprint there 5%, and again, that's a $250,000 worth of rebates back to Intel. Now that buys quite a few servers, doesn't it?
Yes.
Well, we're going to hit the May the 1st or whenever it is, April the something of the carbon
You're right.
reduction thing, aren't we, next year in Britain?
Carbon reduction commitment, yes.
Commitment,
Now, yes.
CRC. Yep,
now, on here, I see that you've hit 4 years as the best payback.
That was the key thing I wanted to highlight, which is...
This is the big slide of the thing.
This
4
is
years.
the big
This is
slide.
the money slide.
Let's cut to the mustard. 4 years, that's what it's all about, okay? So you can see if you refresh sooner, right, if you do a cadence of every 2 years, there's some other things that come in there, software licenses, the energy as well. But what we found, the sweet spot, right, this is the key takeaway, would be 4 years, right?
Okay, let me get to from our voting here, from the poll that we did today, then that about agrees with the people who've answered the poll today.
Fantastic.
That's the median, 4 years. Some people as well, and either side of that, it's even between 3 years and the greater than 4 years. Not surprisingly, there's only a couple of people who are 1 to 2 years. But yeah, so the median answer is 4 years.
Yeah, and I think, it obviously varies, by company. If you're doing, high performance computing, or if you're Pixar or somebody like that, then you want the latest and the greatest, right? But for most of us out there, probably a 4 year is a nice one to have.
Right, we've only got a few minutes left, so we need to skip on to make sure we get some practical advice in here.
Okay. So one question I think the readers, ought to have is, well, did you do it this year, right? It's been a tough year. We've all been challenged, by the economic climate, Yeah. Did you still do it?
Yeah.
Absolutely we did. We did a server refresh this year. We actually worked out if we had deferred the server refresh until next year, it was going to cost us $90 million, right? And a ton of electricity, I think 1.3 megawatts of electricity or something like that. So, yes, it is worth doing, even in the tough times. If you miss the cadence, it only causes problems far later.
You're just storing up your problems for later on.
are.
And you're increasing your cost today. Yeah.
Okay, 5 steps to consider. I don't want to do mother pie and apple crumble or whatever it's called.
Mother pie crumble.
You know
I
what
don't want you
I
to
mean.
do that either.
No, we don't want that.
No.
Suck eggs and suck eggs. Here we
Yeah,
go.
yeah.
5 steps to consider.
Mother pie should never suck eggs, yeah.
We've talked around industry as a benchmark. Know what you have. Obviously, know your priorities.
Yeah.
Look at the different approaches. The key thing I think we had was gaining commitment from the organisation. Don't just, this is for the bigger organisations, don't go and just talk to one line of business. You need IT, you need facilities, you need the lines of business, you need exec management sponsor, right? That way you'll get it through. Here was my plug for the TCO stuff. If you want to go and have a look, we've got a whole TCO model around. Okay, I've got this old stuff. If I consolidate it down, how much is it going to save me? When do I get my payback, right?
But behind all of this, there seems to be a work it out. Just sit down and get the blank piece of paper out and do the maths, isn't there? The kind of know what you got, know how much that's costing you, and just actually do the calculations. And then, of course, you need to get the buy-in. But that's just showing people the calculations, isn't it? Ultimately,
absolutely. And I think that the key point on some of this is, if you don't have a server refresh strategy, make sure you've got one, right? That's number one. Or at least are thinking about it. We've given some tips into, where you can look at that. And also, if you do have one, you need to keep refining it as well. You know, construction's cost change, maybe the server ASP drops, or, you know, there's some variations in there. So don't just assume it's 4 years. It might move to 3, it might move to 3.5, who knows?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it's going to change as prices fluctuate, server prices, as the software develops, power prices change.
Absolutely.
All of these things, they're going to keep changing it. So it's good to keep this model live, I guess. Yeah. Okay. John, practically speaking?
One of the things that we're constantly trying to get people to do is really to think about stuff not from the point of view of technology, but from the point of view of the business. Ultimately, I've sort of got a question for Ian, really, because when we talk about is this maintenance stuff, is this innovation stuff, to me this is almost good maintenance. It's almost taking a more practical view of, I'm spending, I don't know, it could be 100 million, it could be 3 million, it could be 100k, or it could be a few thousand quid on my IT today, specifically on my servers. Is that wise? Am I spending more than I need to do? We have this kind of idea. I think there's a human psychology. Maybe I'm just thinking back to 2001: Space Odyssey, when he chucks the bone up in the sky, it turns into a spaceship. The bone is going to solve all problems. You know, we have this kind of magic bullet kind of attitude to IT.
You have a
don't
remarkable mind, but it is a problem to get to at the moment to go with a shopping list.
It's that kind
your
of
financial director.
You know, rather than thinking that it's just about buying some new stuff and it's going to get you out of a hole.
Yes.
Just sit down, stop and think, and get a picture of what you really do need to do. Which is, it's not motherhood. It's actually because it's not what a lot of people do. So it's not actually that common as far as sense is concerned.
Mm-hmm. So we've got a slide here which sort of kind of summarises where we've been with this. What would you pick out from this, John?
Where are we?
Briefly, because we're almost out.
Very briefly, 3 minutes to go. I think the point is it's about knowing where you can save money first. Right now, we're coming out of the downturn, so still look for opportunities to save money. Look for freeing up capital. There's a big CapEx, OpEx, capital expense versus OpEx. So just freeing up money so you can spend it on more sensible stuff is absolutely the thing to do right now.
But we do a lot of these things about different technologies and different stuff, and we always end up saying to people, well, make sure that it's a priority before you do it. Where do servers rank in all of this? Are they right at the front or at the back of the queue?
I think, to be honest, and it's back to the conversations I was having with Ian as we were developing this whole workshop, I've got to get this phrase in before the end, which is, I can see a Nahilum fly. It's that elephant thing. The world has evolved, and technology really has significantly improved in terms of what the server capabilities are today. And I think having a look at what they can do in terms of running multiple workloads, and it's back to the V word, I'm afraid. If you don't want it, and you're happy with what you got, you're happy with what you're spending, then it's not a problem. But there has been some significant innovation in the server layer over the past 3 or 4 years, and that's well worth looking at whether it's a valid investment.
Yeah, and from your point of view, and I mean, it's only a couple of years since Intel's been thinking about this sort of stuff in an organised way. It's not surprising if a lot of your customers aren't.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I was quite surprised, actually, when I started diving into this as a bit of research. And I agree with you. You know, I think that's why we're highlighting it. I think one of the things that we've tended to do is add in more and more servers as the demand increases and not necessarily thinking about it. Some people are already hitting some of those barriers and have thought about it, right? And I guess the encouragement for the readers out there is, look, if you haven't thought about it, maybe you should, right? There's some good reasons, we think, for doing so. Go and take a look.
Okay, guys. Well, we're out of time. There's a couple of technical questions there that we haven't had time to deal with. But Ian, that's your job for afterwards. That's an action on you for afterwards.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, fine. Just to make sure we keep everyone happy. Thanks very much for tuning in. There is, what I always forget to say is that there's going to be, you'll be able to download this and watch it afterwards if you want to see it again, or pass it on to your friends. If you download the slides, you'll get some more depth on the figures that Ian was using, just to prove that he wasn't making them up. But thank you very much for joining our glamorous Las Vegas webcast on Server Refresh. Hope you got what you wanted out of us. Tell us that in your feedback. I've been Tiny Tim Phillips. Goodbye.